All right, we're back once again for our next episode of The Horseman's Voice. We had a great interview last week with both Amber Sawyer and Mark Anderson. Hopefully he's got a contract coming his way. But we've got our first Cushing we're going to be hanging out today. Hopefully we're going to start a new, regular episode, Hanging with the Cushings. Mike, you there?
I am, Eric. How are you today?
I'm doing all right, man. I heard you're snowed in on the East Coast like everybody else.
Yeah, we've had a little bit of snow, and the forecast says over the next week we're gonna get some more. But we live in ski country, so it helps our economy to have some snow in the winter. So we're getting it.
Well, we interviewed your wife. Sherry got a huge response from the industry. Very, very positive. What types of things do you guys do, I guess, just to start out in the wintertime with your horses?
We don't race in New England in December and January and February and sometimes a little March. So after they get 5 or 6 weeks of pasture time, we start them back with some light work, tow behind a pickup truck, we're stable at a fairgrounds, do some work that way. We actually do some sleigh work, and then the traditional jog cart work like anybody else. But anyway, we can get some miles on them and get them built up to point towards an April start and training in full-time training in March. So we take a little break from the horses and us both take a little bit of break for a while, and we're back at it. And we just started back this week.
Gotcha. So, we had an introduction back, I guess, way back in the beginning when we started our publication. I guess, what do you remember about your first introduction with the Horseman's Voice?
My first introduction with it was you reached out to me, Horseman's Voice reached out to me just after I'd gotten through a pretty severe accident in a horse racing accident at Bangor back in '08. And you caught me at a weak moment with we're under sedation and you name it, but it was certainly much appreciated because it brought my incident to a lot of places that I had been in the past, or some that people I'd never met and never crossed paths with, that reached out to well wishers and stuff, and things like that can serve as a healing part of the healing process and speed it up a little bit to know that there are people out there that are worried about you. And I've done the same since to some people that have been through similar accidents of mine that I didn't know that. And Horseman's Voice kind of started that trend for me to think to do that stuff. So it's much appreciated. It's been a while, but we're good to be back talking to you.
Well, I'm going to publicly apologize. I mean, I thought about this before, and I'm going to publicly apologize. I mean, you were sedated. I didn't really think you were, and I have the actual audio. I mean, I could pull this and send it to you, in the future. But sometimes there's a line, and there's a fine line that's crossed with people's, personal lives and HIPAA and medical stuff, and to all the drivers and trainers and people that get injured out there, that's not our intent. Our intent is to get the word out for healing. John Campbell, Connell Willis. I remember just a slew of people that we've helped in the industry, and that's our intention. So again, I apologize for that, but let's go and move forward. I mean, how life-changing was that accident?
At the time, I was still, young enough to almost not think it was going to be a lifelong issue. But the truth, it was very life-changing. But it also was far, far better than it very well could have been. I mean, what happened was a horse went down in front of me, and he was a distance from me. I thought I could get around him, which I was, and just as I was going by the horse that was down, she went to her knees. She rolled sideways, and it wheeled a sulky right out in my horse's path, which I could not avoid. It launched me, and I broke 3 vertebrae in my lower back. And for the next hour or two, whether I was going to have use of my legs or not was in question. And the truth is that, quite often that type of injury you don't. As it turns out, I was on my feet a few days later after surgery, and I can get myself around, but it's no problem. I mean, if someone watched me walk from the side, you might think I had a bad back, but most often you wouldn't. But there's constant nerve damage is permanent, and there's tingling, and there's pain. But quite honestly, most everything that I was able to do before, I can still function and do those same things. It just might be at a little slower pace. That's all.
Wow.
So yes, it was a unfortunate incident, but I came out of it better than many. So for that, I'm very grateful.
Wow. And, Sherry, we did the interview with her, and she said how she challenged herself and went out and got her GED, and then she got a degree, and now she's a nurse. I'm sure that plays a role with you every day as well. I mean, she probably knows a lot more than the average bear in helping you with your day-to-day management.
Yeah, she does. I'm sure she told you. I mean, I listened to the interview, but as a very young girl, she had seen an accident and thought, had nothing to do with her, but she had thought to herself that I'd like to be a nurse. I could help people. And then her life path went a different direction, and I think the time that after that happened to me and is in the hospital, and she had contemplating doing something else, not sure what, at least part time. I think that time frame that I was in there, she thought, I felt like I had some sort of a calling as a young girl to do it. Now I'm looking at it again, someone that she cares about in that situation, and I think it did spur as a bit of a motivator. I told her for years prior to that getting hurt that as far as her getting an education and being capable, she was capable of great things, and I think it made her go for it. And without question,
well, she's an amazing horsewoman. Let's tap into another woman in your life. Do you want to start and delve into a little bit of the history of the Cushing family, the matriarch, your mother?
Yeah, my dad was the one that drove and trained horses, and everybody knew him. He's just a charismatic guy. And we think that it all started with him, but that's really not true. He and my mom were high school sweethearts, and he was an athlete like Ron and myself that did the traditional football, basketball, ski. And then he was dating my mom, who her parents owned and bred standardbreds. And when he got out of college, it was like, well, I really want to still do sports, but he didn't care about golf. And he started helping them with the horses. And after a year or two of getting involved with it a little bit, his older brother, who you may end up speaking to again, Robert Cushing, Bob, who was 84, going to be 85 in June, still trains horses.
Wow.
They said, you know what, let's get into this. And they thought they'd own a horse or two.
So not to cut you off or anything, but then if we look at your niece and nephew, what generation would they be? And I guess what generation would your mom be? And then what generation is your father? Is your father first generation and you're second on his side? And then your mom would be second and you'd be third on hers? I mean...
That's right.
Wow.
Right. I would be third generation on my mom's side. And then, yes, I have a niece and nephew involved with horses. My nephew Mitchell is pretty prominent driver, at least in the New England circuit. Dabbled a bit in New Jersey with some success, and he's now out in Ohio, spreading his wings a little. And then his sister, my niece, she's gone the direction of U.S. Saddlebred, but she does some marketing and promotion for them out of Kentucky, and horses are just in the Cushing blood, and it stems from my mom's side of the family when she was a kid.
Well, and we've got a lot of Cushings to hang out with, so we'll see what this does with us, because we're just delving into your family, and it's amazing. So I guess let's talk about the current day. We did a little bit of history with your wife, but I guess what's your current role in the industry aside from being a driver trainer?
I delved after getting, actually right before I got injured, but I'd actually delved into announcing that kind of came on by accident, sort of, where someone didn't show up to announce, and though I'd never called races in my mind, I had, and I was pretty good at it, at least for somebody that had never done it. And I ended up announcing races at Scarborough Downs for 3 or 4 years.
Oh, wow.
It wasn't really what I wanted to do, but I did it for a while. And now I just do a couple fairs. I do a couple fairs here, agricultural fairs to announce the races. Sherry and I still train several. Occasionally I drive. Actually, last year I don't even think I did one time. But still train, active. I'm also the president of the Maine Harness Horsemen's Association. which is a fantastic thing to get into. It's a perfectly full-time job with no pay. But you know what? Horse racing is my passion, and I want to keep it going in Maine. And if I think I can have any role in it that can put it in the right direction, that's kind of what my spare time to do with horses. It doesn't jogging, training, turning out, the everyday stuff is with the Horsemen's Association. So a little bit of announcing, work with the association, and still train and run up and down the New England coast, hitting the 3 or 4 different tracks and 8 main fair tracks to have harness racing. So
you're aware of Amber Sawyer. What's your take, I guess, on the whole fair circuit and just the whole grassroots movement that's going on across the country with fairs? I mean, a lot of the fairs this year were closed down due to COVID, and they're trying to revamp their efforts to open up this year. And it's still, not known if a lot of these fairs will run. But I mean, what's that feeling you have, I guess, when you step into a fairground?
It really, you feel the history. I liken it to this. Actually, my wife and I went for a Sunday drive today. We were driving to Windsor Fairgrounds because we were in the area, and there's some horsemen stable there, much the same the way that her and I are at Farmington Fairgrounds. Windsor is just outside of Augusta, Maine's capital. It's a fantastic fair. They go through Labor Day weekend, and they didn't have it this year. But I liken it to this, and I've never even had that asked Eric what it feels like when I pull into a fairgrounds. But I got the same feeling when my wife and I pulled into Goshen. I've been there before, but we were there a couple months ago. Is when I got out of college, I went to Michigan, where Ron, my brother, was racing at the time, and that's where Mitchell and Jessica grew up around the horses. And I'd raced a couple different commercial tracks and done some driving and whatnot. But then I went to Hazel Park. Now it's no longer racing, but Hazel Park, I said to myself after I went out through the old grandstand and the old paddock, but everything was immaculately cared for. I could tell there'd been some history there. It was like when I stepped into Fenway Park as a fan, it's like, man, this has been around for 100 years, and the things that have gone on here.
That's right.
Hazel Park felt that way to me. I could feel it. And when I pull into some of our fairgrounds, I know that it was historically Maine fairs were a big part of racing.
That's right.
100 plus years ago.
That's right.
And some of these fairgrounds that have been well kept, I still, I'll go up to warm a horse up and climb up onto the track with the horse in the cart and say, there was some big time horsemen and big time horses that went over the surface 120 years ago. It's really a cool thing to think of. But, in Maine fairs, I've been to Michigan fairs, not Ohio, but Ohio's a great fair area. But, there's all different shapes and sizes. And the Amber's in the state where there's very little racing, and the fairs are the roots, the grassroots that she's trying to keep going. And I love that stuff. In fact, I say I do a couple fairs, and usually each fair I end up doing one that is it's basically a volunteer job, and that's because they're on the verge of can they afford to have pari-mutuel racing or the cost of putting on racing as such that I don't want to see it die. So
exactly.
at least five or six of us as officials will be basically working for enough to cover the cost of fuel to get there, but the big picture is
keeping the tradition.
That's it, keeping the tradition. These commercial tracks, these young drivers that you see, they need a minor league somewhere to start, and it's usually at an agricultural fair or a little bitty track. And you can talk from Campbell O'Donnell all the way down to Mike Cushing, and they're going to tell you that they started at some little track, usually at fairgrounds, and we need to keep those things alive for the next generation to have a playing ground to get started.
I had a conversation with somebody with the Department of Agriculture in a jurisdiction I'm not going to name, and I brought up the idea of literally attacking all of the county fairgrounds in the state of Illinois from a socioeconomic standpoint and building economic development. What are your thoughts on going back to the grassroots, going back to the movement, working with local businesses, working with local media, and promoting at the grassroots level like a guy like Ed Teefee does, with the fairs here. We have a fair that he runs every year, and he promotes and promotes and promotes, and he brings people in to buy horses. What do you think of, I guess, the economic angle of fair county racing?
I think that's absolutely right, and I think some small businesses get it, some don't. But I know, I'll just speak for the local fair the town that I live in, Farmington. They race 7 days during that week, and it doesn't make sense in some respects if you're going to the race to the grandstand or as a horseman. So why are we racing Tuesday and say Monday and Thursday? Because people are working, they don't have time to come in, and you don't get the crowd. The thing that a gentleman that's a friend of mine, been a family friend for years, that's the director of racing, said, Mike, the fair realizes and the town realizes that flow of traffic, trucks, trailers,
bingo,
the people that work, officials that are coming there to each day are a signal. Those trucks and trailers are almost a billboard that are going through town that reminds someone else that might be on the outskirts of town that catches a sulky and trailer going by saying, oh, that's right, Farmington Fair is this week. I got to get over there.
Exactly.
Now, they may not follow you directly to the track that day, but they're going to make it to the fair because it alerted them it was going on, and the local businesses, those convenience stores, fuel stations,
exactly,
hotels,
exactly.
The snowball effect of how harness racing affects the local economy it's crazy. Like for every dollar that's wagered, the study that was done not too awfully long ago, we had done here, I think 2012 maybe, but like for every dollar that is spent by a horseman or a wagered or the track, it's $7 that is spent, times that times 7. Because people left their town, fueled up, grabbed food, did this, went out to eat after. It makes a difference.
You've hit the nail on the head. You've literally taken the words out of my mouth. I worked, in conjunction with my direct mayor in Morton Grove in a total of 35 communities for 10 years when I took a break, from the Horseman's Voice and disappeared for a while. And I've learned how to promote. And I'll tell you, man, I've had events closed down due to our promotions. I've had people say, what did you do? We utilized radio, PSAs, we utilized old school media, and the people showed up. And I'm not saying, social media is the complete answer, but I think a lot of the fairs, if anybody's listening, on the county fair level, you need to go back to that grassroots level. You need to reach out to these businesses. You need to walk in face to face, introduce yourself. The Rock has that saying, bust that door down, smile and introduce yourself. And it's true. People need to reach out, And with your position, I mean, you see everything. You see the whole gamut, both as a driver, trainer, announcer, and in your position with the Horsemen's Association. But, we're running out of time. Man. We could talk for hours. Your wife was right.
Yeah.
But is there anybody, I guess, in the industry over the years, besides the family, that you want to give a special shout out to, that you've learned anything, or somebody that's helped you in the industry?
My goodness, Eric, I feel terrible of the people that I left out, but I can tell you, I'm usually thinking a broad spectrum that's helped me as a trainer or the industry, or I usually think of people that everyone, say, in New England might know. But to me, there's been a few different owners that came along in my lifetime where I thought, you know what, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to afford to keep doing this. And someone would come into my life that meant a few horses that helped pay the bills. And I'm going to throw out some names. There's a gentleman named Chuck Amson who came along when I was just starting in my early 20s that believed in me and provided me with being able to move to Michigan, move to Massachusetts, and take some horses. About the time that financially he realized that owning a bunch of horses wasn't the way to go. And a gentleman named Brian Houston, who's up in the Bangor area, that did that. And then since then, I moved home to where I grew up here in Farmington about 20-something years ago. And a gentleman, Neil Trenton, who I've known for years, who since he's passed. And those are a few owners that if not for, like of all the different tentacles that I have been involved in the industry, I'm not sure if not for those three gentlemen, I wouldn't have made it to this point.
So
they made it possible to keep doing it.
So you're saying like
they're not with me now. I think of them often.
So you're saying, and sorry to interrupt again, but you're saying again, like others are saying, in this industry, it's all about relationships.
It absolutely is. It is. And I'm still, the last gentleman I mentioned, he's since passed, but we're still friends with his family. His kids, though they don't own standard beds, they've got one, they know us, they congratulate us, and sometimes, even though it's not of a financial relationship, it's a boost. In fact, the last gentleman I mentioned, Neil Trenton, his family we're still friends with, one of the pictures my wife probably saw, if not I will, is of us going right through the middle of Farmington on a horse and sleigh in the middle of winter. Wow. And we're in front of Trenton's Market, which was owned by the last gentleman mentioned, Neil Trenton, who, oh my goodness, I must have had 30 horses with him through the years, owned them in partnership quite often with him, but it's all about people. It's all about connections. If you're in harness racing, I'm sure I can't think of a track I couldn't walk into right now and think, well, geez, I've never been to Ohio or I've never been to California. But I'd walk into Paddock in California and go, where is Steve Wiseman? Because I remember him from Foxborough. I mean, from Plainridge, or into Ohio and go, well, where's Jason and Jeff Brewer? Because in the 90s, when they were out east, I was hooked up with them. You can't go somewhere that there's not some sort of personal connection that you've crossed paths, and it's a great thing. Honestly, it's the best part of the industry.
It's true.
Even though we're competing against each other, we're still all on the same team.
It's true. It's true horsemanship. I mean, I've heard it from a driver in the past. We're friends and stuff on the track. We hang out after. We go golfing. We do this. We do that. But once that gate opens, and until the end of that race, it's war.
No doubt. No, it's a competitive. Trust me. There's nothing that Patrick Holmes wants to do more next week than to beat Tom Brady.
There you go.
But I'll promise you that the two will talk after and be the best of friends. But it's a great mix. It's no different than when you talk about going golfing with a driver. Sure, you're going to play somebody a buck a hole or give them a hard time or want to compete, but the 19th hole, having a drink after and sharing stories is far more important than the competition at the end of the day.
Wow. It's amazing. Well, again, I appreciate your time. You're a hard guy to get in touch with and schedule something. Enjoy the snow up Upper East, and up next is your nephew, and we'll see if we can maybe talk with your mom and maybe talk with your niece and maybe talk with some more Cushings and hang out more with you guys. I really appreciate your time.
I think that would be great.
I really appreciate your time again, but thanks again, Mike.